Welcome to Swayam online platform. The MOOC course is on urban local governance. And in today's video, we will have a panel discussion on urbanization, its challenges, and the possible solutions. We have with us today eminent and erudite scholars from around the academic world on urbanization. I'd like to introduce the team. We have Dr. Divyan from Political Science Department, Associate Professor, Madras Christian College. Welcome, sir. We have Dr. Vasuprada from Communication Department, Madras Christian College. Welcome, ma'am. We also have amidst us Dr. Sudha from the Department of Political Science, Madras Christian College. Digital India definitely is going to become a faceless, paperless, and cashless society. But it is not an easy task, as you said, because there is a lot of issues of connectivity, a lot of issues of having the connectivity at the right place. And the urbanization is so forthcoming that I don't know with the speed at which it is moving, whether the connectivity will reach its mark. Nevertheless, we have made leaping steps to achieve our goals. But at the same time, technology plays an important role in everyone's life. But if you see, I just thought about poor economics of Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, who rightly pointed out that the money which is used is not used for the right purpose, for eradication of poverty. It is used for leisure items like a television or a mobile, which has become a necessity for the way of life and a standard of living. That the cost of food products are increasing. And also, we see that more of processed food. So, now we can talk about the food habits of urban dwellers. Food habits, and invariably, we are talking about health hazards and also malnutrition on one side. We also see obesity, lifestyle diseases, which is part and parcel now. Everyone seems to have a diabetic. So that's an issue which we are all talking about. How do we handle this, Professor Divyan?
Yes, madam, you're right concerning the food habits of the urban dweller. Yes, and as of course, Dr. Sudha has pointed out concerning widespread malnutrition among the urban slum. There seems to be a wide gap between the food habit consumption among the urban dwellers. When you're talking in terms of the affluent people, more of them have relied on junk food from some of the multinational corporations who are churning out a number of food chains and the eateries which have come about who do not practice the the prescribed health parameters which they have. And of course, we run into a number of news items concerning food poisoning, which sometimes ends fatally. And this has happened across the strata of the urban classes, right from the higher affluent people to the lower to the poor. So therefore, yes, food is a grave concern concerning the urban dweller, and of course the type of packed food which comes in with the preservatives, which they say leads to cancer, is also a grave concern concerning food habits in the city as such.
Adding to what Professor Divyan's told, again, when we understand food and health, we need to understand it with regard to what happens to the rich and the poor, right? So the rich have their own problems where though they are aware, they take all kinds of food which may not be good for their health, and probably they're also aware of exercise, and they have more access to health care. Probably you could see people with a regular health checkup and things like that. But what happens to the poor? The fact is that being in the urban area, the poor also has an access to all kinds of food that are there in the urban area. A child in a slum or in an informal settlement if there is enough money, probably it would go and have, the child would go and have a burger or some fast food, some kind of a food that is nearby, available nearby. But there it is uh, more than the taste, it's the hunger that we need to understand. So for them, again, creating awareness is secondary, but having access to the basic needs, that becomes very essential. And then educating them on risks that are there. Sir was talking about how sometimes it could become fatal because those children may even not have parents around to guide them and tell them whether they can have something or not. And then of course comes issues of malnutrition and the right kind of care, health care, access to health care. They may neglect many health issues. I'm sure they would neglect, right? And making them aware of that is again the responsibility of the community, the NGOs. The academic community actually can play a very important role. The social workers, the students of public administration or political science, the media, they can reach out, they can identify certain places, they can reach out and have some kind of awareness programs so that people over there understand what is right with regard to health.
Uh, just to add on to what Professor Sudha touched upon, academic community's involvement can really make a huge difference. Let me give you an example. Professor Arvind Singhal has given this method of positive deviance. When you are studying developing countries, especially, if we see that there's a mass of urban poor, especially the slum dwellers, there might be, say, around 50 to 60 households which can be taken as part of the study, and you may end up finding that at least 10 to 15 households don't have malnutrition. So we'll have to see how is their dietary pattern, where are they sourcing their foods from. So similar kind of models can be propagated to the other households so that we get the enrichment from the community. So we get the competencies that are the indigenous forms of survival techniques that the communities already are empowered with. That can be propagated across the households.
Yes, and
So I
also
think
the noon meal scheme, midday meal
yes,
scheme, which was introduced in all education institutions, especially the government institutions, so that education, apart from education, malnutrition also can be addressed. The issue of malnutrition. But then again, whatever said and done, we see that these diseases are there part and parcel, especially in the urban setting, because there are a lot of tempting promotions, freebies given, and so it is just erratic. At the same time, food inspection could be more appropriated. That is not done appropriately. If it is done on a regular basis, where perhaps we can also reduce the risk factors as far as the food and also the urban dwellers are concerned. Let me also discuss on the congestion, the traffic congestion, which is also an issue in the urban areas.
Absolutely.
So, what is your take on that, Professor
Uh,
Divya?
Yes, of course. When you're talking in terms of the traffic congestions, especially in a city like Chennai, they say that the city as such is largely unplanned, and the roads as such are the main streets on which the maximum amount of traffic is on. They are narrow, and there is no further scope for expansion, and this has actually created a lot of problems concerning large amount of traffic congestions, which causes health risk because of the amount of emission which comes about, especially for those who are in two wheelers. Of course, you see that the number of two-wheeler users in a city is 4 times that of four-wheelers, and so therefore they are under a greater risk concerning inhalation of harmful smoke. And this has also created a lot of problems, health problems, and also, of course, as you mentioned, diabetes. stress-related diabetes, and this has been a very important concern concerning research also among the students of urban sociology and health as such. So in that sense, yes, of course, you rightly brought up the point of the traffic congestion as a problem in urbanization.
And I
And
think
Just to add on to that, if you see, India also has the largest number of traffic deaths. If you just go by the 2013 figure that was reported, 1,37,572 is the officially reported number. So, on one end, when we are talking about urbanization, we should also talk about our road safety, because road safety is extremely neglected topic, not just in terms of road safety but also in terms of following the traffic rules. How many of us follow lane discipline? Lane discipline is so basic to how traffic should flow in a city, especially in an urbanized world, urbanized space. It is very, very important that the four wheeler has a different track, the two wheelers have a different track. We do have a lot of four lane systems within our cities, but this is not being propagated enough.
and also the homeless sleeping on the
Exactly.
platform and get some four-wheel drives that running over them. That is also an issue.
Issue.
now this, I think, becomes the responsibility of the local government. Regulating traffic, places where you have, the shopping hubs and all that. Even the way people park their vehicles, right? There has to be proper planning and also regular monitoring. That becomes very, very important. So that becomes the huge responsibility of the local government, and also awareness creation, as we have discussed.
On one end, awareness creation, on the other side, policy formulation, and paired with industry community engagements. I think it should be a collaborative work. Again, there are three levels over here. So, macro, meso, and micro. I think where we can affect change as academicians is at the micro level. We can even involve students to study the urban spaces around us, the immediate environment around us. What are the issues? What are the challenges? What kind of green city can we promote? What kind of green governance can we bring about? All these are very construed as very fashionable topics, unfortunately. Oh, here they go talking about eco tourism, talking about eco development, green sustainable factors, but these are not fashionable themes anymore. It is up to us to realize that these are rather immediate and urgent themes that we should start looking at. There needs to be a lot of research around these themes. That is when we are going to make our urban spaces truly sustainable.
When you're talking in terms of the new education policy, which was drawn out in 2020, there is a lot of emphasis on what is called as the Industria Academia partnership, where there is a lot of scope for academic consultancy, which can be utilized for urbanization or studies, or what you may call as urban studies. And urban studies will become quite will provide a lot of scope for research, especially disciplinary research, when you're talking in terms of a wide variety of expertise from sociology, public administration, political science, media. They come together to formulate certain solutions for the urban development or sustainability, as such we call it.
This actually could be an input for the policymakers. Whatever research we are going to do, the different departments, we can come together. That would be an input to the policymakers, and they can identify problems, right? And they can make the right policy, number one. And it also has to be futuristic.
Yes, well, concerning the concept of urbanization, especially we're talking in terms of the new education policy 2020, there's been a lot of emphasis on industry academia partnership, where there's a scope for a lot of consultancy programs based on urbanization between industry and academia. This will bring about a lot of emphasis on research, especially research which is relevant for policy making, where it is backed by corporate social responsibility from the industry as well. So a lot of focus needs to be given there, which will in fact give a lot of scope for studentship in urban studies across disciplines, which are not only social science disciplines but also natural science disciplines.
So now that leads to the point where this research and the findings of the students, the academia, it would be an input to the government. The government can make right policies when it is going to have the data from researchers, and we also need to approach it from a futuristic perspective, because the problem is not static, right? It is a process and it's going to keep changing. So whatever is the need of the times, it has to change that way. And we were also discussing on the participative approach, right, where we can involve the concerned people. So for that, probably a lot of survey research has to be done, so that they can give us inputs on what is their need. And when it is participative, probably, we can also have a follow up. We can find out what happens when some policy gets implemented. What is the outcome of that? So that becomes very, very important, where we need to follow up.
So the engaged governance aspect, where a lot of stakeholders will be involved. It could be the private companies, as Sir rightly pointed out, the corporate social responsibility, and also adopting areas, so that, like how the ex-Nora had adopted streets and brought in cleaning the city, and eventually the government took it up. So I think such models, especially we should take the best practices from Singapore now model, or the Chandigarh city model, how it was planned and how it was executed. So new cities can be formed with definite planning, what the Niti Aayog has told. And also when we're talking about education, education also has an important role as an institution. The education system should be aware of its surroundings.
That's a pertinent point, actually. If you see, in my discipline, there's something called communication for social change. UNICEF has come out with different modules. They are ready to give these modules to all of us. So it's up to academicians and institutions involved in research to start programs based on that, because in the future, if we see, we need students who are trained to think about all of these things, because social change is a huge issue.
And I think even an effort can be taken to train some of these people who are really poor, some kind of employment, some kind of capacity building, by which, because when you look at, we were talking about poverty, right? When you look at a very unsettled way of living, I would say that it is a physical manifestation of poverty. So if we are going to take an effort whereby, the economic status of people is improved, I think it would be a better lifestyle or a better living.
Not just that, I think policies, its implementation has to be validated at a grassroots level. I'll give you a very simple example. Remember the times when freebies were given by the governments to be elected governments? So they have given a number of things like laptops. So I saw this thing live in an Irula community where they had around 8 hours power cut. So how are they going to be able to charge their laptop? Energy deficiency is a huge problem. These are all grassroots level issues which we are not addressing. We are talking about other policies. We are talking about percolating media literacy skills, technological gadgets. But we are not eradicating the basic infrastructural challenges that we have in our community spaces. I think that's where we need to lay our emphasis on.
Actually, when I was looking into the policies, urban policy, the government has actually recognized many good policies. But somewhere down the line, there has been a gap, especially with the aspect of implementation or execution, or the aspect of advocacy, or creating awareness among the people, or people making use of the policy. So that is where it is lacking. The gap between bureaucracy and the community.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what I mentioned before. When you're talking in terms of municipal administration, it's different from state or central administration. we need to have a different approach altogether. And it all boils down to something called as city information system. If you take, for example, ChennaiOnline.com, that's what they started off with, where they're talking in terms of giving as much as information as possible. But then how many of the, as what Dr. Sudha had talked about, the lower strata of the society are having access to the internet to watch such kind of informative websites. Most of their time is spent on cable TV with entertainment as such. So how much of information can an average or a lower class urbanite be able to consume? That's where the question of a lot of debate is.
And also the issue now comes about when we talk about urban dwellers, we'll also talk about gender inequality. And now we have talks on how to have inclusive development. So where do you think it's lacking? Why is because usually the urban area should be more role models so that it can be easily accepted in the rural areas. So I think as far as the transgenders are concerned, we have few recognition, but then as far as skill development is concerned, it's not very inclusive. What is your take on it, ma'am?
I would say that the reason is life in the city is very busy. You are not, you don't have time to think about the other person. So that again requires a lot of programs where you will be bringing people together. It will not be the same in a rural area. Something happens at one place, all the entire village will know what's happening. But here in the city, probably the neighbor, you don't even know your neighbors because you don't have time for them, right? That is true probably with all strata of the society. If when they are in the city, they are running for their livelihood, and they don't have time to think of other things, right? So this again requires a lot of effort. People have to take an effort. Community has to take an effort where you can think of addressing this issue.
That brings us to a theme of discussing around employability. If we are talking about gender based employment, I'll not even come to the space of transgender. Let's talk about women.
Amen.
How many women lost their jobs during the COVID lockdown? Because I'll tell you examples that I saw in my own space. I know a number of women who lost their jobs because they couldn't go to work. There were no spaces to take care of children because there were no schools. And daycares were shut down inadvertently. There was no scope for daycares to operate. So, what happens to this particular woman who's employed and there's COVID and there's no one to take care of the child? Perhaps her spouse is going to work, she's managing the household, the child, and yet she's expected to be at work 9 to 5. Are we empathetic? Are our organization, industries, institution empathetic towards women? We are not doing enough in that space. So this creates a lot of disparity. It compromises every household's income. They have the potential to earn much more, but there are no flexible policies. Why is there a one size fits all policy? Shouldn't we not talk about motherhood? Why are employers discriminating against hiring women, especially when they are at their marriageable age? They say you leave the job and go if you're married. You leave the job and go if you're pregnant. These are important issues that we need to talk about. We need to also start an advocacy perhaps to bring corporates to think about, work from home policies. In a lot of spaces it is possible. It can reduce your traffic, it can increase engagement with gendered communities who are not currently in the workforce. So it is important to have a track on diversity when we are talking about the employment.
Yes.
I also saw a
Yes, ma'am.
positive change where these women could empower each other by organizing the self-help groups, and so that was an opportunity for them to develop themselves. So that was something which was also seen where even some kind of training. This is a fact with some of the rural areas also. They could get some kind of a training, and they took the lead. See, a woman who knows something, she takes the lead and tries to empower the other person. So one leads to the other. So such kind of positive aspects also are possible when they are in an urban area. There is more access to certain amenities, right?
I think skilling is an important
Yes.
aspect
Yes.
which can be promoted. If you see, the
Definitely.
National Skill Development Council has various programs for skilling, but it is not promoted properly, or the awareness is poor. I think the self-help group is an important dimension because it also encourages entrepreneurship. We have seen after the COVID, a lot of entrepreneurs have come in a small scale at least. But of course, business and entrepreneurship is something which does not happen overnight. It involves a lot of finances. So the role of the financial institutions also is very important.
Exactly.
And we see that some of these finances are not met for these entrepreneurs because it's very difficult to repay the debts, and eventually they go back. So skilling and sustaining is something which we need to also think about.
Yes.
As far as the policy is concerned, there are policy, but awareness, and I guess maybe the lot of NGOs should work on skilling the unemployed or the unorganized sector so that they can have a plan B. Because unemployment is something which is part and parcel, especially in the urban areas. Because when they call the COVID, as you rightly said, ma'am, that immediately people lost their jobs because
True.
either they cannot travel or they had their commitments, family commitments. So that kind of comfort of work from home is the result of the COVID, if you see. But at the same time, skilling is an important thing which has to be emphasized. How do you think the education institution should play as far as skilling is concerned?
As you rightly pointed out, awareness is the key word in this framework of thought that we are exploring. Skilling, reskilling, upskilling, pre service training, in service training. So, there are a lot of zones that we should be very clear about. For example, if a particular person is recruited to a job, initially when they are in the job, they learn, they're given a training, but a lot of companies cannot afford the kind of training, so a lot of freshers are denied opportunities. So this is where we can come in as educational institution and offer skilling based modules for them to go ahead, be employable. And reskilling is another aspect that we have ignored. People lose their jobs because they are not able to upgrade themselves. And another important thing is a lot of skills are soft skills. Soft skills are not recognized on paper. So, as educational institution, especially if we take centers for teaching and learning, there is a huge scope for them to convert soft skills to hard skills by just looking at their competencies. It could be developed, industry wise. It could be segmented. Look at all the soft skills that are there, and we try to acknowledge it, assess it, and give them a certificate. By giving a certificate, it becomes a hard skill. So it becomes something that they can put on their CV, and they become more marketable as a potential person who could be hired.
Well, very well said, ma'am. Dr. Divyan, I would like to know because with this growing urbanization, there is also a growing culture amongst the youth. So there is always this peer pressure. And also, despite the education institution creating awareness, how can we create responsible urban dwellers?
Yes, when in fact our own college we have a team called as Friends of Students group, where we would like to bring students and staff into a forum and discuss about students' problems, where they discuss their problems threadbare. It includes both the genders of the student community. Yes, of course. When you're talking in terms of the urban community, it is increasingly professional, and this professionalism transfers to a certain extent to the emotional part of the students as well. And so they take certain relationships to be professional in nature and then later on fall into certain problems. And that needs to be avoided only through guidance. And of course, educational institutions can play a pioneering role in such kind of guidance, not only to the youth who are part as students, but also to the general youth community. As you know, higher education is just hardly, say, 25% of the youth population, whereas the 75 are not part of higher education over the entire country as such. And of course, we say in Tamil Nadu it's 50%, but then the statistics is debatable. So therefore, we are talking about a large number of students or youth community in need of such kind of guidance or perhaps interaction as such.
I think that brings to the problem of being preoccupied with some work, because what came out of it also is the depression problems and the aspect of counseling. You see that it is a necessity. Maybe we are from another generation. We were taken for granted. There is nothing called depression. But you ask any youth now, I'm depressed, immediately they say. So, what is the reason with this urbanization? You see a lot of growth happening, standard of living has improved. But what is the peer pressure causing them to tell these terms like depression, inability to do things, refusing to, think of entrepreneurship or commitment to work?
There
What
is,
do you
I
think?
think, now there is more demand. They have their own way of looking at things. So when they want to have that competition, they feel that only if they achieve that, they have achieved something in life. So that is again the awareness that has to be created among the youth. We need to talk to them. There again comes the issue where um, is that counseling available? We need to even identify that is that is an issue which has to be addressed both for a child who's having access to good education, and also to a child which who's poor. So that is something which the educators and the counselors, they need to do a lot of research, and they need to address that issue of handling the youth.
I think the last 1 hour we have deliberated on a variety of themes, pertinent topics that we need to take forward with us. So I'd like to probably, conclude with one statement saying that India's urban population has reached 420 million. That is 33% of total population in 2015 itself. So we are expected to almost double to 800 million by 2050. So that's the challenge we have ahead.
That is very right, because we are actually racing with China, and very soon we will be overtaking China, and that is going to be indeed a big challenge for us. Now it's like a slow cycle race. If we slow down our population, then it would be good. And also making use of our human resources very positively, and also having good infrastructure programs, implementation to reduce the gap between the bureaucracy and the community, and also the stakeholders, the government, and also good governance practices like participation, accountability, responsibility, and also having effective and efficient programs so that it can reach to the people easily. And also they can have some kind of help desk so that they know where they are standing, not only for educational institution but for people from all walks of life, so that the counseling could help them to move forward. And I think we have discussed with the panelists about the social, economic, political, and also the cultural aspect which is running in the urban society. And it is definitely a challenge, but also the positive, as Professor Sudha had told, it's a process. And the process involves change, a dynamic change, and it's not going to be static. And this looks very progressive and it looks very futuristic. And I hope such discussions will encourage to reduce the risk factors and also encourage people to think about the community socially relevant programs to be implemented by the institutions, by the industry, and so it can culminate to a very satisfied or at least sustainable urban society. Thank you very much, panelists. Dr. Sudha, for enlightening us with relevant plans about housing, and also Professor Vasuprada about your detailed statistic information about where we stand as far as urbanization is concerned, and of course Vivian for your wonderful insights on urbanization. Thank you very much for this enlightening discussion forum. I hope you have enjoyed the video.